Yes, ma'am.
because they are quite broad. Another few minutes and then we start, right? Yeah, so meanwhile, maybe I can just give a recap till the others are joining in, right? We can do that. So yesterday we began with the Freud psychosexual development theory. And when we are talking about, am I audible, Ma? Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hello,
ma'am. Yes,
you
ma'am.
can hear me? Yeah, yeah. Just I was wondering whether I was talking to myself. Okay, so I
No, ma'am,
just
no.
checked. Okay, good. So yesterday we were focusing on Freud, like the important concepts about, what he talks about the conscious, the pre-conscious, and the unconscious, and then we also spoke about id, ego, and superego.
Super ego.
Yeah, and then we also briefly tried to understand the defense mechanism generally people use to be able to cope with their emotions, right? So
Yes,
in the
ma'am.
defense mechanism, we had some psychological mechanisms that are totally unconscious and which distorts the reality, and it is used in extensively by different people, right? So some
Yes,
of
ma'am.
them were repression, right, which is
Yes,
suppressing
ma'am.
unwanted and negative thoughts and feelings permanently into unconscious. Then we spoke about regression, that is stooping to an earlier stage of development to deal with unpleasant feelings. And then we spoke about projection, attributing wrongly negative feeling of oneself to another. Then we spoke about rationalization, right? Justifying one's
Then
negative
negative thoughts
behavior.
and feelings.
Yeah, yeah. And then we also spoke about reaction formation, portraying feelings behavior opposite of what one's feeling or thinking is. And then we came to displacement, like how we divert our feelings onto somebody else or something else. And then the last one we spoke was sublimation, that is channelizing the negative emotions into socially acceptable manner, right? So I think we
Yes,
stopped here, and then we move on to the psychosexual stages of development given by Freud, explaining the unfolding of a person's personality through the stages of development. According to Freud, a person's personality gets fixed by the age of 6. It is called the psychosexual theory because Freud elaborates on the interplay between the psychic energy of the sex instinct, referred to as libido, and the biological process of maturation, that is affecting the psychological characteristics of a person's personality. According to him, there are certain areas or zones in the human body which gives pleasure when stimulated, and they are called the erogenous zones. These zones are different in each age period. There are 5 stages, and each stage has a time period given. And if the child doesn't successfully pass through the stage, it results in what Freud calls it as fixation. Therefore, fixation in each stage is different. So, what are those 5 stages? We will just go through now, right? So, stage one is the oral stage, which actually is from 0 to 1.5 years, that is 1.5 years. Okay, this is the first stage in the psychosexual development theory, characterized by the infant seeking gratification with the mouth as the erogenous zone in this period. That is, indulging in the process of nipple and thumb sucking, biting, chewing, right? Dependency on the mother. When you observe the babies, you will see all these kind of, actions that the baby does. So one of the reasons why most babies tend to keep everything in their mouth is because, according to Freud, very little gratification stages leads to fixation or oral passive personality, characterized by habits such as smoking, thumb sucking, nail biting, binge eating, etc. Too much gratification in this stage leads to oral aggressive personality, characterized by the qualities such as domination and aggressiveness, etc. Okay, so that is the first stage, which is called the oral stage. Right? So we are already, yeah. The second stage is the anal stage, that is from 1.5 year to 3 years in a child's life. In this stage, what happens? The children seek pleasure in eliminating the waste from the body through defecating, right, and urinating. Hence, the anus becomes the Arenas zone. In the first stage, the mouth becomes the Arenas zone. In the second stage, the anus becomes the Arenas zone. The relationship with the parent and the kind of parenting in toilet training determines the fixation at this stage. If the parents are too harsh, right, if they are too strict, especially when they are toilet training a little toddler, it will result in anal retention personality characterized by qualities of stubbornness, obsession with tidiness, perfectionism, etc. Extremely lenient parenting in toilet training leads to anal expulsive personality characterized by qualities such as untidiness, messy, disorganized, wasteful, careless, reckless, etc. Okay, so this is the second stage. The third stage is called the phallic stage. This stage is between 3 to 6 years. In this stage, the children become aware of their bodies and the differences in the sexual organs between the males and the females. They are filled with wonder and curiosity to explore their bodies and indulge in the process of masturbation to seek pleasure from the erogenous zones in the genital area. Freud mentions about several concepts, especially important in phallic stage, which the children deal with and which are controversial in nature. According to Freud, a boy child in the stage develops sexual feelings towards a mother referred as Oedipus complex and is angry with the father because he is always with the mother. However, he fears that his father knows about his feelings, he must cut off his penis, right? So, which is dear to him, referred as the castration anxiety, thereby starts to identify with this father to resolve the problem. This process of identification involves imitating behaviors, values, and attitude of the father. On the other hand, if you look at the girls, they also have the sexual feeling towards a father, which is also referred to as Oedipus complex. However, neo-Freudians have given another term called the Electra complex, and they experience the feeling of inadequacy for not having penis, which the father has, referred to as a penis envy. However, compensates the feelings of not having a penis by replacing it with the capacity to have a baby. The fixation in the stage leads to sexual dysfunction, sexual confusion among boys and girls. And the fourth stage is the stage of latency, which is from 6 years to puberty. In this stage, the libido of the child is dormant and gets diverted to the school activities, and the children engage in forming peer relations, learning to adapt to new places, pursuing hobbies, acquiring new skills, building social skills, etc. In this stage, children also engage in same sex play. In this stage, erogenous zone is specifically not mentioned, and the fixation is prior stages gets carried forwarded to this stage. Then we come to the stage 5, which is the genital stage, that is from puberty onwards, right? Once the children attain puberty. This is the last stage, according to Freud, of psychosexual stages of development, which is the genital stage, which begins at puberty. The individual's libido is channelized in the forming mature sexual relations, marriage, and child rearing. Fixation in this stage leads to sexual identity, concerns, sexual perversion, and other sexual issues, right? So there's some critical evaluation of this theory of development. Freud's concept of structure of personality and defense mechanism have gained popularity across the world, and many contemporary ego psychologists also refer to as post-neo-Freudians, expanded on those concepts to formulate these theories. There are many studies undertaken later to understand adult personalities and relationships based on the Oedipus complex and the Electra complexes. Freud's theory has been criticized based on this theory of unrepresentative sample, which consists of his patients, and for the lack of empirical evidence on an unrepresentative sample, which consists of his patient. Yeah, he was also criticized for being a misogynist who is prejudiced against women. Another criticism was that his theory gave explanation of stages and its characteristics against women, and that his theory only gave explanation of stages and its characteristics, however, cannot be useful in predicting the behavior. Okay, so with this, we close the Freud's psychosexual development. You have checked for progress. You can look at it, briefly explain the three components of personality according to Sigmund Freud. What will you write when this question comes? Three components of personality. You will write about conscious, preconscious, unconscious, the ego and superego, right? Yeah. and explain any three defense mechanisms. So out of all those defense mechanisms which we have discussed, repression, regression, sublimation and all, from that you can
Daniel,
write. Yeah, very good.
reclamation.
Yes, yes. So you can write any three. So next we move on to Erik Erikson's psychosocial theory. Erik Erikson has formulated the psychosocial theory of development in the 70s, which is focused on discerning the role of the psyche, that is the mind, and the social influences, that is that affects both the individual's development. He stated that the mutual fit of individual and environment, that is of individual's capacity to relate to an ever expanding life space of people and institution to make him part of an ongoing cultural concern. He was a post-Freudian who integrated and expanded on the concept of ego and the psychosocial stages development given by Freud to develop his theory. Eric's psychosocial theory is also a life stage theory, and there are 8 stages, which is very popularly used even now. These 8 stages when people are defining, especially adolescence and different stages. Okay, so the concept of sequential development was derived from the concept of epigenetic principle taken from embryology, coined by Erikson, which emphasizes the idea of predetermined unfolding of an individual's personality as the stages advance. Each stage has an optimal time and is marked by a conflict or a psychosocial crisis which the individual has to successfully resolve to gain the psychosocial strength, which becomes a virtue or an ego quality identified in that stage, and a failure to do so will result in the maladaptation, right? So that's how Erik Erikson talks about the different stages, psychosocial stages. So, according to him, out of 8 stages, he contributed immensely to the adolescent stage, right, which he considered transitioning into adulthood. So, you'll see a lot of content and material will be on adolescent and the issues of adolescence as we learn. Okay, so we move on to Erik Erikson's 8 stages. The first stage is stage one, that is infancy, that is birth to 1 year. In this 1 year, what is the stage the child goes through? Trust versus mistrust. The infant now engages in basic biological process and attempts to make sense of the world to sensorial experience. Okay, so right from the time the child is born till the child reaches 1 year time, the child is experiencing the world, experiencing the warmth, the comfort, right, and getting into the routine, the regularity of the environment, right? And the child looks around and questions itself and asks, this is a safe place. Is the world a safe place to live in? Right? It's predictable and nurturing. Right? The child makes trust amongst gains the virtue of hope described by Erikson. Enduring belief that one can attain one's deep and essential wishes. The development tasks of this stage are developing social attachment, maturation of sensory perception and motor function. Okay, so the development of mistrust is a result of negative experiences in this age, especially from 0 to 1. That is hostile environment, lack of care, when you neglect children, lack of stimulation, or abandonment of the infant. When this happens, the child believes that it is not a safe place. World is not a safe place to be. And with great difficulty, it forms a meaningful, trustworthy relationship later on in life. So that is how trust versus mistrust is formed in the stage one. Then when the child moves on to stage two. Now, what is the stage two? It's a younger age, that is between 1 year to 3 years. And what does the child learn here? Autonomous versus shame and doubt. So in this stage, the child begins to experiment and explore the
But
world around.
madam, what is the meaning of autonomous?
Autonomy, yeah, because autonomy is independent. Like we go, we are covering that. Okay, so
Okay, ma'am.
yeah, world around acquires skills to manipulate and struggles to have control over things and strive to be independent, to have an identity that can be established. So the role of the parent is very crucial in encouraging the child to be self-reliant, to engage in basic routine tasks and instill confidence, right? See, autonomy is helping the child to be independent, helping the child to be able to walk on its own, helping the child to be, because see, the age group is 1 to 3. In this age group, the children will want to, eat by spoon. They may mess up the place while they are eating. But their parents should help them to learn to eat on their own, learn to able to walk around, run around, like, not be behind them, and giving them self doubts, and and causing them shame if they are falling. Okay, so the toddler will try to imitate, right? It observe the surrounding, it observe the adults who are around them and how they are encouraging or discouraging or whatever it is. So the development tasks in the stage are locomotion, language development, fantasy, play, and self-control. If the toddler is given independence and freedom to explore, he or she develops. If the toddler is not given, right, the independence and the freedom to explore, then what happens? They develop shame and doubt, resulting in low self-esteem and self-doubt. Suppose if they're saying, they're learning to say some word and everybody laughs, so they feel ashamed that they have done something wrong. So the self-esteem will get affected, right? They're wanting to do something, right? Something very small, maybe an activity. But if they are snubbed instead of encouraging and helping them to complete that activity, if they are snubbed, and if they are threatened, and if they're not allowed to be on their own, then they develop all these kind of problems, right? But if you encourage them, if you have good parent, a good parent will encourage, a good parent will help the child to become independent, so the child will develop its own identity. Okay, so that is what it means when we talk about autonomy versus shame and doubt. The stage 3, is it clear, Manimala? It's clear, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So we move on to stage 3, which is a preschool age, right? The child starts going to school, which is the early childhood. That is the age of 3 to 6 years. And here what happens? Initiative versus guilt. In this stage, the child acquires new skills, takes responsibility, has a sense of ambition, prepares to receive formal education. The concept of morality and understanding the consequence of action develops in this stage. Okay. This process, the child progresses and leads in order to accomplish goals and develops a psychosocial strength of initiative, taking which is possible with the required stimulation and motivation from the significant others, right? So, which further aids in gaining the virtue of purpose, which is the courage to imagine and pursue valued goals. The fundamental question here is, the child asks here, am I good at what I do? The developmental tasks the child engages are in the sex role identification, right? Early moral development, make believe play, and group games. If the child doesn't receive the kind of parenting which strikes a balance between being stern and giving love, the child will feel guilty for actions incurred and will feel scared to engage in new behavior. Okay, so this is what is about initiative versus guilt, right? The child is in the process of wanting to learn, so the child wants to take initiative, and if we are not giving the child the initiative to be able to act on its own, right, the child will start doubting itself and start feeling guilty, right, and start wondering whether I am good, whether I'm able to do, I don't have the ability, all these kind of things will happen to the child. So that is the preschool age, because the child will start going to school, learning what is right, what is wrong, learn to imitate, like, and identify itself as a girl, as a boy. Okay. Stage 4 is school age, right, which is from the age of 6 to 12 years. That is the industry versus inferiority. Now, this stage is characterized by formal education and attaining social skills by going to school. In this stage, the child learns from parents, teachers, peers, and everybody who's surrounding in the environment. The child develops the psychosocial strength of industry by enjoying the successes experienced in the process of learning, and establishes self-pride and self-confidence. Moreover, enables the child to develop a virtue of competence, which is free of exercise of skill and intelligence and completion of tasks. The question the child asks here is again, am I worthy? Right? Am I worth? The developmental task, that is, um, the child puts is forming the peer relationships, team play, self-evaluation, skill building, right? So in a supportive environment, the child will develop that industrious way of working, right? But if the child is not supported enough, that the child is not in an unsupportive environment, the child loses the capacity to learn and master the skill, and that makes the child feel inferior, right, around them, and the child will feel inadequate. Okay, so that's how in this age group especially, the child gets conscious and the child develops either industrious or it can develop inferiority. Stage 5 is the adolescence. Now, this is a very important stage in the child's life. That is from the age of 12 to 18 years. Here, what happens? The most important thing happens. That is, the child develops an identity of its own. So, the stage here creates no contradiction between identity creation versus role confusion. Right? So, an adolescent dealing with biological and psychological changes inside him or her, making judgments to the demands of the social world. So the constant, the individual is trying to find an answer to the question of who am I, and dwells deeper in getting the understanding or into likes, dislikes, hopes, values, wishes, and dream. It's a transitory period. Okay, so in this period, no, the child is still learning to become an adult. So what happened in the transition period? They have these struggles, right? Sometimes when they are asking too many questions, no, they'll be snubbed down and say, "Don't act like a big boy or big girl." Suppose if they are not, if they act like children, they say you act like a baby, right? So in between these two, right, they do not know whether they should act like a child or whether they should act like an adult because they are in a transitory form. So they are in dilemma. They are, a lot of questioning of their self, their ability to understand who they are. That's a kind of a role confusion, right? Identity crisis, right? It happens at this time because it is not giving them a clear perspective. Okay, so in this whole process, what happens if a right, if they are supported with the right environment, they develop a very good positive identity about who they are, and they will move on towards adulthood, and the transition will be very smooth. But if they are, if they are not, because see, this is the stage they are going taller. If there are boys, they are going taller. They're getting the beard. They're getting mustache. Right. Emotionally, also a lot of changes are taking place. Psychologically, also similarly with the girls, there'll be what they are maturing and right, and then the breast development is there. The sexual organs are getting there, so they become very conscious of all this. And this is the time we have to be very gentle with them. But when you are very critical about their body shaming, sometimes some children are body shamed because they're growing too fat at the time, or their voices are becoming hoarse, so they feel shy to talk. They find shy to stand up in the classroom and ask a question because they're going through this kind of role clarity, right? So when the transition is smooth, they develop a very good identity. Otherwise, they will have role confusion. That is a part. Then stage six. Stage six, early adulthood, that is from 19 years to 40 years. What happens in the stage? In the stage is intimacy versus isolation. What is the stage about after 19? What happens, right? The adult. Now this is young adults, right? 19 to 40. So what are the things happens in this time, right? They'll get into a job, they may be completing their studies, then they'll get into a relationship, right? They want companionship, they want love, they want friendship, right?
They want
So
trust.
yeah, they will attract a lot of other opposite sex, all this, they want to get married, they want to have children, and they want to gain employment. They start having goals to build a house, buy a car, all these kind of things happen. So the question for them is, can I completely love somebody, right? Because by the time they are 19, more or less the identity is set. But for some people it may take a little longer, but mostly according to Eric Erickson, by 19 it is set. So after 19, they look for this intimacy. So when they are not able to find a companionship, when they are not able to find good friends, they started feeling isolated, they started feeling alone, all this kind of problems. Okay. So developmental tasks include love relationships, marriage, childbearing, gain employment. Others who fail to experience this bond encounter isolation, which translates into emotional suffering as a result of troubled relationships. Okay. So when they are not able to find, they start feeling lonely and they start accusing themselves, like, I'm no good. That is why I'm not getting any friends. I'm the only one who doesn't have a boyfriend. All these are issues that is coming out at this time. Okay. Then we move to the seventh stage. Seventh stage is what? Middle adulthood. That is from the age of 45 to 60 year,
65.
65 year. Yeah. And what happens at this age? Generativity, generatively versus stagnation. Okay, so this is again a middle adulthood, right, where the focus is now settled for career, family, raising. If the person is settled well, like married and raising children, the individuals try to seek a balance in fulfilling his social and moral duties and seeks way to help the society. So the fundamental question one asks at this stage is, can I producing
You
something
produce
of value
something of
with
value
my
with
life?
life.
Okay. Yeah. Generatively, it's the psychosocial strength experience when one feels that the life is being productive, right? So if they are married, they have, they have a companion, a good partner, then the children are growing, they are very well settled in life, right? And they are earning very well, and they are also able to volunteer, help, find meaning, in doing something. So they'll feel the sense of productivity, and they are constantly learning, right? Either they are academically progressing, or career wise they are progressing, or they are constantly learning, stimulating their mind. Okay. So the virtue of care, which is the ability to fend and commit to others, is gained on this stage. Developmental tasks, the person engages in parenting, work life balance, career advancement, all this happen, right? Now in stagnation, and versus stagnation means what? They are not able to do these things what generally anybody can do. When they are not able to do, they feel stagnated, right? So, midlife crisis is felt by individuals who experience stagnation. Suppose if there is a young girl, no, she finished her education, she got married, she's raising children, and half her life she went on settling the children. Okay, she never looked after herself, she neglected, which is common among many women. And suddenly she feels, what is my life about? Right? I've given everything for everybody. I served my husband, I served my children. Now, who am I? What is there? So, one kind of stagnation. When I was in college, I was so happy. I was having so many friends. Now, I lost out on all my friends by being busy with raising up these children. Then, after then, raising up the grandchildren. So, the whole life is so somewhere, this kind of stagnation it can happen. It can happen even among men. They full
It's
focus on house and career, right? And then suddenly they feel a little lost. Okay. So that is a
not
stagnation. Yeah. So stage 8 is a later adulthood. What is later adulthood is 65 years
65 years to
to
death.
death. What happens here? Ego integrity versus despair. So according to Erickson, this is the final stage in psychosocial theory, which deals with individuals reviewing their life and perceiving their journey as a whole. This stage deals with how well individuals integrate their life experiences and make meaningful interpretations after the retirement life begins. So this is the time for them to analyze, to look back, to reflect, and wonder how far they have come in life, right? How much, what have they achieved, what have they done, whether they are feeling content, whether they are feeling fulfilled. Yeah. And all this, being detached, concerned, active, and then they start thinking about, now I'm moving, after some time I will be no more, then what will happen to my children, right? If they have brought up their children very well, and they made them comfortable, right? If they're settled well, they settled in job and companionship, so it is fine because they have done their job, and now okay, so tomorrow even if I die, there is no problem because I've fulfilled all my responsibility. But if they have not done that, then again there is a kind of a despair, there's a kind of distress. What will happen? And I'm not settled my daughter, or not settled my son. This kind of thought process also will, I think. So developmental tasks in the stage involve dealing with the death of closed ones, raising grandchildren, taking up new roles to contribute society. Okay, because they are retired, they have plenty of free time, right? Pursuing hobbies and developing a perspective towards death. Despair is experienced by individuals who have a sense of regret and become preoccupied in the past. So for some people, no, they feel a lot of regrets. I don't know why I wasted so much of my life. I should have continued. I should have done my PhD, right? Or maybe I should have bought a house for myself. Now I'm dependent on my daughter. I'm dependent on my son. I am at the mercy of my grandchildren, right? So all this kind of, some people can also have these kind of regrets, and sometimes they can be preoccupied with the past. Array, I should have married that same person. I don't know why I left, why I had a breakup. I should have apologized. I should have made up. All these kind of past thoughts can occupy their mind. Okay. So let's look at the critical evaluation of the Erickson theory. Yeah. Anybody wants to read? Just a small para. Okay. Erickson's theory has widely been
Theory
accepted.
has been widely accepted and applicable in many areas of child marriage and
Mm,
vocational counseling and
mm.
physiotherapy. According to
Psychotherapy.
the
Psychotherapy.
psychotherapy, according the
Yeah.
MC Adams
Yeah.
2001, Erickson's outline a a more realistic perspective,
Realistic.
perspective,
Realistic
Realistic.
perspective. Realistic
realistic perspective
perspective. Yeah.
of personality development. This theory given by Erikson is definitely
Mm.
one of the most comprehensive lifespan theories combining the biological, social, and psychological aspects of development. He also introduced a concept of mutuality, which was not stressed upon by earlier psychologists, and emphasis. What is that, ma'am?
On
Emphasis
emphasized
on
on.
ego development across the lifespan of an individual. Despite this advantage of Erickson's theory, was criticized for the lack of consideration for individual differences, for giving undue importance to the childhood stages, thereby ignoring the last three stages, adulthood having significant age gap. The causes of development are not discussed in this theory.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Manimala. That was very sweet of you. So, okay, so for every theory, we will have some kind of criticism. So, similarly with Erickson also, there is a people are criticizing that there are disadvantages in his theory. Okay, so you have check your progress. Okay, explain the early adulthood stage of Erickson's psychosocial theory of development. So it is very obvious. You can just write that. Critically evaluate is the psychosocial, the last para. Next, we move on to Piaget's cognitive development theory. Okay, so a little bit about who this person is. Jean Piaget propounded the cognitive development theory and one of the earliest in contributing an organized and structured stage theory encompassing the development of cognitive ability throughout the lifespan of individual. His theory gained importance as he presented a novel perspective in giving reason to the differences of mental abilities between children and adults, which was not researched until then. Okay, and Piaget's work experience with children at Binet Institute aided him gain an insight into differences in thinking of children and adults by questioning logical errors committed by children while answering questions in comparison to adults. He considered the influence of biological maturation and envy. This is the difference between the Erikson and the Freud. Okay, so Piaget's focus is on biological maturation and the environmental interaction as a basis for cognitive development. He was a constructivist who believed that children build knowledge by making meaningful interpretations from the environment as and how they meet with new experiences. Some important concepts in Piaget's cognitive development are okay. So, only with the Piaget, you will come across these terminologies. See, for instance, the first terminology is schemas. Okay, what are schemas? Schemas are nothing but the concepts that you and I form. They are mental representation of the world. So, according to him, our brain forms schemas to organize, categorize the information to make sense of the world. Some schemas are innate and most are learned. So, for example, he says, see, when you're talking about schema of a dog, will include animal, four-legged, one-tail, barking sound, etc. Okay. Suppose if I say cat, similarly, you will also start thinking. Suppose if I say princess, you'll start thinking the princess is having a crown on the head. She's wearing a beautiful long frock, right? And the same way, if I say anything, right? If I say a tiger or a lion, okay, the mental representation immediately comes to our mind. Like it's a four-legged animal with a tail and back all the time. So, according to Piaget, individuals keep modifying schemas with new information received from the environment, and with age, number, and complexity increases. Schemas are very important for cognitive development, right? So, as we keep changing, our schemas, our mental representations of certain things will get modified. Okay, so that is what is schema is all about. Suppose you get a one, two line answer, they ask you what is schema, you should be able to tell about schema is the concept we form, right? That is the mental representation of our brains, right? Of mental representation of the world, right? And how our brains form schemas. And you can give an example of this dog or elephant or whatever comes to your mind. Okay, so that will enough for your two marks answer. Okay, the next is assimilation and accommodation processes. What is this? To further expand this on schemas, the way individual acquires and maintains schemas depend on two complementary processes. One is assimilation, right? Taking in, right? The other one is accommodation. So assimilation takes place when new information in the environment is consistent with the existing schemas. And accommodation is where the new information needs to make changes in existing schemas. So let us look at the example given in your textbook. What is the example given? The child learns about apple and starts calling all round shaped fruits like plum, peach also as apple, right? Because it's a child, right? They're just learning. Okay, it's a learning period. Then it is assimilation happens where the child understands that not all round shaped fruits in red are apples. Okay, so what happens here? That is accommodation. So you can take like this different example, right? Now all kinds of greens, the child may think it is what palakura maybe. Okay, but there are so many different varieties. So the child, when the child is small, will look at all the green leafy vegetables and think that these are the same, one and the same. But as the child grows, so that is assimilation, right? Looking at all the green leafy vegetables and calling it spinach is one assimilation. But as the child grows and start distinguishing the different kinds of leafy vegetables, that is accommodation, because the child now understands all green leafy vegetables are not spinach, but there are different varieties of them. Okay. Now equilibrium is maintained through assimilation, where accommodation creates this equilibrium. Piaget has formulated 4 stages in cognitive development across lifespan individuals. He referred to them as invariant stages, as believes that everybody develops cognition accordingly to these stages in a given order without skipping or going back. So each stage has different cognitive abilities and skills. So all of us also develop these kind of schemas, right? Mental representations while growing up, and each of us are very different because we are coming from a unique environment, a unique set of parents, and everything that we experience is very different from each other. Okay, now let us look at what are the different stages according to himself. So he comes up with the stage 1 as sensory motor stage. Now sensory motor stage is from 0 to 2 years, right from the time child is born up to age 2. What happens in the stage? Children perceive, explore environment through the senses and motor abilities. They experiment the different ways of responding to stimuli and learn from their behavior. The common behavior the infant engages are sucking, grasping, rooting, etc. Object permanence, which is understanding the objects which, when hidden, do exist in this world, forms at the end of this stage. Thinking in terms of symbol to comprehend the world takes place. Piaget has further divided the sensory motor into 6 substages, right? So he's talking about the hand movements, right? The leg movements and thumb sucking, all those kind of different things what the child does. So he is taken now simple reflex, what he calls about, that is birth to 1 month. What happens here? Basic senses, action coordination is attended. Then he says about primary circular reaction, that is 1 to 4 months, where the baby habits repetition, right? Pleasurable, which is thumb sucking, right? It can, yeah. Then there is secondary circular reaction, 4 to 8 months, where it goes beyond the self of exploring and forms a relationship with the others, right? It when somebody carries the baby and they tries to call the baby's name, they coo, they make it repeat. The baby will start making sound. The baby will start responding to the stimuli, right? The coordination of the secondary circular reaction, 8 to 12 months. That is a hand-eye coordination starts to do. It uses multiple schemas to make decision intentionally. So object permanence is attained in this stage. Okay, that is already it's going to be 1 year. Then there is tertiary circular reaction. The infant, that is 12 to 18 months, the infant is referred to as a younger scientist who is filled with curiosity to explore objects around in relation to properties and details. So you see the cause and effect, they throw ball, they roll, they squeeze, they bite, all these kind of, when you walk children, it is very interesting. And then there is internalization of schemas, that is 18 to 24 months, that is by the age of 2. The infant begins to perceive the world through symbols and mental representation. The capacity to find the hidden object which cannot be seen in this stage. Okay. So all that will come under the stage 1. Now we go to stage 2, which is a pre-operational stage. That is from the age of 2 to 7 years. Here important thing happens. Main thing is the language development in this stage among children, because they help to understand and relate to the world. egocentrism. That is, they know it is me, I, right? That is mom, right? When you go and say, "Mummy is mine," they'll say no, right? All those kind of things will happen with the children. They engage and make believe and also pretend to play where they are using imagination, creativity, right? Like you give them a teddy bear or you give them something to play with and all. Okay, and they'll start getting angry. Sometimes they'll beat the teddy bear, they'll pacify, they'll cajole, they'll kiss, all this kind of thing. They'll hug. Some children even will sleep with the teddy bear. Okay, so all these kind of things happen in the pre-operational stage. Then we move to the stage 3. What is the stage 3? Concrete operational stage, which is the 7 to 12 years. What happens in the stage? They get involved in the mental and logical operations. See, 7 years means they are already going to school, right? So they are meeting the peers. They are, sitting in the classroom, right? They start thinking. They are logical. They are learning numbers. They are learning alphabets. They are learning maths and all these kind of things. So they start rationalize and their ability to conserve understanding, right? And they start also calculations. They know what it means. 1 liter glass poured in oil. All these kind of size, shapes, everything. What is taught in the school at this period of time in the age group of 7 to 11. Okay, so all those kind of things happen in this stage. They no longer shows animism, however not capable of abstract thinking. So everything is now scientific because they are learning so much and they are learning from the books, learning from the teachers, learning from experiments. Okay, yeah, then they come to the stage 4. That is the formal operational stage, which is from 12 years to adulthood. Now, this is the last stage of Piaget's cognitive development theory, where children are capable of adult thinking because they are perceiving the world in a rational, hypothetical, imaginative, and abstract manner. They are capable of making inferences and deduced logic from situation and experience an encounter, which is deductive reasoning, and they are able to think about things that are actually not present but possible in future, make sense of vague information, right, which is abstract thinking. They gain emotional maturity to some extent and begin to indulge in process of self-reflection and awareness. That is from age of 12 years to adulthood. Okay, so a lot of reasoning and all will happen. Okay, so again we have a critical evaluation of the Piaget's theory. Anybody wants to read?
Kohlberg provides a very useful framework
Not
in
Kohlberg,
understanding.
not Kohlberg. It's Piaget.
Page number
Piaget. Page number
25.
25.
of
25.
25.
25. Yeah.
Piaget's theory of cognitive development has gained significant recognition in
Mm,
the in the
History
history
of
of psychology. His
mm,
contribution is considered very valuable to understand the development of cognitions across lifespan. This
mm,
theory is widely applicable in educational settings to
mm,
monitor and stimulate intellectual development amongst children.
mm,
However, it was criticized for the age range and the order of stages, which
mm.
makes it rigid. His theory was also criticized for not considering the role of culture and social interactions, the role of memory and attention in formulating the theory.
Very good. Thank you, Vaishnavi. Is it Vaishnavi?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, ma. Okay, so good. So again, now you see, as every psychologist, they come up with different kinds of theories. There will be a little bit of criticism, but it is even today widely accepted, and it's a very interesting thing that even now we talk about schemas, we talk about assimilation, accommodation, and all this stuff. Okay, so let's look at the progress. Explain the concept of assimilation and accommodation according to Jean Piaget. You will be able to write know what assimilation is and you will be able to give an example. Okay. Briefly explain the formal operation stage of Piaget's cognitive development theory. Okay. Look for the operational stage and then you learn it and write. Okay. So we move next to the Kohlberg's theory of moral development. Okay. This is the last of the theoretical perspective. Okay. The last person because we finished with Freud, we finished with Erik Erikson, then we finished with Jean Piaget, and number 4, we came to Kohlberg's theory of moral development.
modern development.
Okay, so a little bit about who Kohlberg is. Now, Lawrence Kohlberg has formulated the theory of modern development based on Piaget's concepts of morality. He concluded that morality differs with age and from person to person by posing moral dilemmas to people of different ages and based on this theory on the response obtained from the interviews. Kohlberg also believed that the moral reasoning is the basis for ethical behavior. Therefore, it is important to take moral reasoning into consideration while making an evaluation of the person. He also strived hard to prove why people behave in certain ways and reduce the morality amongst people also tends to develop and mature with age. He identified three stages of moral development, and these stages are universal and invariant, and every individual must pass through the stages in the given order without skipping stages or moving backwards. Each stage has two sub stages, and the following are the various stages of moral development given by Kohlberg. Okay, so now let us look at the development. So this is according to Kohlberg. The first one is a pre-conventional stage. Pre-conventional states are concerned with morality attached to consequences of the actions or personal needs. Mostly children exhibit this kind of morality. However, some adults also exhibit it. Okay. In this, he puts stage number one, that is punishment and obedience orientation. In this stage, the person bases actions by assessing the consequences of the action in terms of whether he or she should be rewarded for it or would be punished. The person's tendency to obey authority figures who set the rules and the individuals may consider behavior not to be wrong if they are not punished, irrespective of whether it is morally right in reality or not. The harsher the punishment, the greater is the act perceived as bad, which leads to avoidance to a great extent. Okay, so this is what punishment versus obedient orientation. If the child, disobeys, suppose an elder, and if the child gets slapped or whacked, next time the child is very careful because the child knows the consequences of the action of disobedience, right? So that's how punishment versus obedience orientation. The child learns, the harsher the punishment, right, the greater the act is perceived. That means if the child is made to, maybe stand in the sun, or maybe beaten with maybe beaten with a big stick, which was very painful and all, then the child will know that the child has done something very wrong, and that is why the punishment has been so bad. Okay. Now, stage two, instrumental hedonism. What is this? The second stage of moral development is the person engages in behavior which gives personal benefit to him or her. They base their morality on the question, what will I get if I take up this? Their personal gain is their interest and show less concern for others' needs. The guiding philosophy in the stages, you scratch them back and add scratches. Okay. So here, in this stage, what happens? The child's moral question is, what will I get? That is why you see parents should start rewarding you. Do your homework, right? I love you to go out and play. So the reward is more important. The child is really not interested in study. But for the sake of the reward, will run out and do those things, right? So that is what. So these two stages comes under the pre-conventional stage. Then we move to the conventional stage. What is the conventional stage? Others' views are given more important. Right? There, the child's views give important. Here, others' views are given important, which extend to authorities and societies. Moral reasoning is based on catering to the expectations, rules, and laws. Mostly adolescents and adults exhibit this kind of moral reasoning. So in this, we have stage 3 and stage 4. So what is the stage 3? That is a good boy or a good girl morality. In this stage, people are concerned about social expectations and behave in ways to seek approval from people. Just like the name stage suggests, they look for appreciation, validation for what they do. Behavior is judged by the intention in the stage, fulfilling the social obligation and doing justice to social role with an intention to gain acceptance from the social world. Right? So it could be very like, maybe the young girl is entering the room, all the elders are sitting, and the child, it wants to, she will just not walk out, or he or the boy will just not walk out. They'll maybe wish, they say good morning or namaskaram, good afternoon, how are you? These are small greetings and a little bit of, etiquette. And so it's a good behavior, right? Because they don't want to, they want to be validated so that everybody will say how good this girl is. She's so well mannered. She's so, all this kind of things. So they like those validation. They like to be, judged in that way. right? So fulfilling social obligation and doing justice to the social roles, okay? So that is what is about stage three. Stage four is authority and social order, maintaining morality. In this stage, a person's consideration for himself and the needs to get validated get shifted to a larger perspective, following a social order and societal laws in order to maintain proper functioning of the society. So moral obligation to uphold laws is followed in this stage. Okay. So when you have an authority figure, so as they keep growing up, they start learning all this, being obedient, of being wishing people, or being clean, or being neat, or being expressing themselves in a very decent way without using any cuss words. All this is a learned behavior, right? So as they grow in the wider circle of society, that also will start expanding depending on the authority and the social order, maintaining the morality. Then we have the post-conventional stage. In this stage, the prominent feature of the individuality and the dependence on authority, other people get reduced, and the focus is always on feeling morally right as an individual based on the internal conscience, which is broad and universal in nature. This may or may not be different from already existing laws and rules. Okay, so here comes stage 5 and 6. So stage 5, morality of contract, that is individual rights and democratic. Oh, I'm sorry. I just lost the. Give me 2 minutes. I lost the page.
27, ma'am.
Yeah. Just skipped. Yeah, 27, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm, but it is not showing in my page.
Stage 5, morality of contract, individual rights
Yeah,
and
yeah, pre-conventional, yes, instrumental, conventional stage over post-conventional. We are in 5 and 6, right?
yes, ma'am.
Yeah. So morality of contract, individual rights and democratically accepted law. So what happens in this stage? The person believes that laws and rules of society should be followed, right? If they are in the public interest and for the welfare of their members. If there are laws,
Rules which are
yeah. If there
rules
are
which
laws which are discriminatory or prejudiced in nature, a person thinks of alternate ways of dealing with such situation and voices out opinions against law. Okay, so here the individual comes to an state where the individual is able to talk about individual rights, right to equality, maybe right to justice. If somebody is discriminated on the basis of color or caste and all, the individual is able to voice out for the situations, right? And they mostly will be wanting to keep the law. And if the law is not respected, they'll find alternative ways of dealing with that opinions. The stage 6 is the last one, which is the morality of individual principles of conscience. What is this? This is the last stage in the theory of moral development and also the highest stage of moral reasoning, and is also considered idealistic and abstract in nature, as very few people reach this stage in reality. In this, a person follows what he or she thinks is right from his own perspective or her perspective, which is aligned with the universal perspective of right and wrong and is not based on legal, societal, and personal rule. So here you find examples of people who possess this kind of moral reasoning are Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, and all. All these people who fought for a freedom of the country, who worked towards a greater good. Like if you remember Maslow's hierarchy of theory, these people are the people who reach the highest self-actualization, right? Their basic needs, everything is met, and then they come to a stage where their thought process is not dependent on what X is saying, what Y is saying, what others will think. No, it is not all based on it. It is based on their own desire to remain truthful, to be desire to be to have that integrity, to stand up for the cause, to fight for a cause, and to live authentically, to live honestly. Okay, So those kind of, so the person reaches an individual following, all the rules and laws, finally reaches a stage where he doesn't require any rules and laws, but he's become that to an extent that he is able to, become a leader who becomes a leader, actually leading people towards righteousness, leading people towards in the right direction, working for a cause and enabling and empowering people. That's what all the leaders doing, right? That one. Okay, so that is the last stage of the Kohlberg's morality of the individual principle of conscious. Okay, then there is a critical evaluation of Kohlberg's theory. Yeah, anybody wants to read? Okay. Kohlberg provides a very useful framework in understanding the development of moral reasoning. Moral dilemmas given by Kohlberg can be applicable in many settings to infer moral reasoning of individuals. There is an evidence of cross-cultural data from the studies done on Kohlberg's theory, which adds to the validity of the theory. Kohlberg was criticized for the last stage being very abstract and idealistic and theoretical in nature. There was also criticism on how sometimes individuals did regress in their moral reasoning, which was not dealt in this theory. Carl Gillian has criticized this theory for being edocentric, as he considered mostly only male participants in this study. Right? So Carl Gillian felt that he was only focusing on men. So the dilemma between moral thinking and moral acting hasn't been addressed in his theory, which is one of the biggest criticism of his theory. Okay. So with this, we end the Kohlberg's moral development theory. Okay. So you have here the answers. Explain the last post-conventional stage of Kohlberg's theory of moral development. Okay, so you can write that. Critically evaluate theory of moral development. Okay, then you have the summary of all that we have learned in this chapters, okay, which is all interconnected. See, you see this
Ma'am,
developmental theory.
can you tell in first unit and second unit important questions?
There's nothing like important questions. I think you should learn everything. See, in the first thing, what did we learn? We learned about growth, maturation, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Growth, maturation, and development. Okay, you must have, these are the key things you must understand. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
so any question related to growth, maturity, development, you should be able to write.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay, so focus on that. Write down few points on growth, few points on maturity, few points on development. That will
Okay.
summarize your unit 1. Unit 2 is what? Theoretical perspective. In theoretical perspectives, who are the people we learnt about? We learnt about Freud. Right? So what does Freud? Freud mainly personality theory. What he's talking about? What does he say about conscious, pre-conscious, unconscious? Right? And then he speaks about ego and superego. Understand? These concepts
Yes,
are
ma'am.
very important. Okay. And then he also talks about defense mechanism. There are so
Yes,
many,
ma'am.
no? In that, if you learn even few of them, they will ask you to write 2 or 3 maximum.
Okay,
Okay.
ma'am. Okay,
Okay.
ma'am.
So that is all about Freud. Then who did we learn next? After Freud, we came to Erikson, 8
Erickson.
stages. Okay, 8 stages of Erikson development, which is again very easy because he begins from the birth, right? So different things that
This one
is.
also they will ask, no, ma'am, assimilation and accommodation process.
What is that? Which stage that is? We are talking about Erik Erikson. Who are you talking about?
It's in page number 25. Explain the concepts of assimilation and accommodation according to Pigment.
Oh, okay. That is called Jean Piaget. Yes. So
Yes.
here in this, so that's what I'm going in order. Freud, what you have to remember, right?
Okay,
Then
ma'am.
Erik Erikson, you must remember the 8 stages. There is no shortcut for that, but you have to remember this. But keep
Okay,
the
ma'am.
examples, then you'll be able to remember. The third
Okay,
one
ma'am.
is Jean Piaget. Jean Piaget, you told me now, assimilation. Yeah, you should remember what is assimilation, what is accommodation. But Jean Piaget, very important is schemas, right? We learnt about the schemas. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And how schemas, what are they, the mental representation they are formed. Then afterwards, how they are assimilated and accommodated. So remember these terminologies. Okay. Then we
Okay,
came
ma'am.
to Kohlberg's moral. Um, After Jean Piaget, we came to Kohlberg's development theory, moral development theory. Okay, which
Yes,
is
ma'am.
again he's talk about pre-conventional stage, conventional stage, and post-conventional stage. Okay.
Okay, ma'am.
Yeah. So here again you have all this thing. It's all summarized for you. Okay. In summary also, I already told you about the ego, superego, all this about Freud, about this
Yes,
one.
ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. In the
మ్యామ్
summary,
నెక్స్ట్ క్లాస్ ఎప్పుడు ఉంటుంది?
next class next weekend, Amma. Next
Next
weekend.
Saturday and Sunday.
Next Saturday, next Sunday. Same time untadamma, 12 to 1. Okay, English. 27 and 28. Okay, so that will be next class. Erickson theory. Yeah, ఇక్కడ అన్ని వేసారు చూడు, assimilation, accommodation process, which expands
Yes,
for the
ma'am.
schemas. Post operating theory, Kohlberg's, yeah, 29. And then there is model questions. ఇక్కడ చూడండి, మోడల్ క్వశ్చన్ లో కూడా పెట్టారు. స్కీమాస్ అంటే ఏంటి, అసిమిలేషన్ అంటే ఏంటి, అకామిడేషన్ అంటే ఏంటి. ఇట్ ఈస్ వెరీ సింపుల్. స్కీమాస్ ఆ మెంటల్ రిప్రజెంటేషన్ చెప్పినా కదా. Mental
Yes, ma'am.
representation, how you assimilate, and then later on how you get accommodated. So all of us, we have grown through different schemas, right? Mental representation of things, our dog, cat, అది ఏదో ఒకటి యూజ్ చేయొచ్చు మనం ఎగ్జాంపుల్ లాగా.
Okay, ma'am.
And assimilation లో, then accommodation. Okay. Then a brief note on fixations on psychostage development. Okay, ఆ 4 stages psychosexual stages ఉంది కదా, అందులో ఎలా ఒక్క స్టేజ్ పోకుంటే ఎలా ఫిక్సేషన్ అయిపోతుంది, you may have to write. Then explain
Okay,
Freud
ma'am.
psychosexual stages and development, discuss cognition, Piaget's cognitive development theory, and then ఇక్కడ అన్ని multiple choice పెట్టారు. Okay, so
Okay, ma'am.
just try to solve it. Okay, there are fill in
Okay,
the
ma'am.
blanks also for us. Okay, and there is match the following. Okay, so just the glossary also ఇచ్చినాడు ఆయన బాగా. డిఫెన్స్ మెకానిజం, ఫిక్సేషన్ అంటే ఏంటి, ఓడిప్లెక్స్ కాంప్లెక్స్ మీన్స్ వాట్, స్కీమా మీన్స్
Yeah,
వాట్,
ma'am.
egocentrism, all this. Okay, so with
Okay,
this
ma'am.
we end the unit 2. Okay,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
next time when we meet we will move to unit 3. Unit 3 లో ఏముంది చూద్దాం. Unit 3. What is in unit 3?
Factors influencing development process.
Okay. Okay, mine got shut down. Fine. So we just move to unit 3 because we have 12 units.
Yes,
12
ma'am.
units, మనకు 6 classes ఉంది. So I'm
Yes,
just
ma'am.
targeting at least మనము one weekend లో if you are able to finish ఒక రెండు
Two
units,
units.
2 units
Yes,
అంటే
ma'am.
we'll be able to cover total. ఇక మనకు టైం మిగిలి ఉంటే we can even do some revision, right?
Yes,
So at
ma'am.
least if you didn't get time to read up everything, at least you should be able to remember, what you heard in the class. Something will
Yes, ma'am.
strike. Okay. So with this, I think now we come to an end of the session. So thank you very much. Weekend Lakuro on Sundays also you have taken interest. What are you all doing? All of your students or anybody doing any work or something?
No, ma'am. Present, I'm not working, ma'am.
Okay,
Previously,
okay,
I used to be in school, pre-primary teacher, mother teacher.
okay. That's nice to know. Manimala. And Vaishnavi, what are you doing?
నేను బీఎస్సీ మైక్రోబయాలజీ ఫైనల్ ఇయర్ చేస్తున్నా మ్యామ్ రెగ్యులర్లో.
Aha.
అట్లనే మెహందీ ఆర్టిస్ట్ మ్యామ్ నేను. అలానే
Em
మెహందీ
artist?
కూడా క్లాస్, మెహందీ
Oh,
ఆర్టిస్ట్.
wow, so nice of you. I'm so proud. So
థ్యాంక్ యూ
you are
మ్యామ్.
doing so many things. You are doing that regular study. మరి ఇది కష్టం అవదమ్మా నీకు?
లేదు మ్యామ్, మేనేజ్ చేసుకోవాల్సి ఉంది.
Okay, very good, very good. I'm happy for you. Okay.
థ్యాంక్ యూ
Anyway,
మ్యామ్.
I'm happy for whoever comes to the class because
Yes.
it also motivates me to, do better. Okay. So
Yes,
we
ma'am.
close the session now. And thanks again, once again, for
Thank you,
attending
ma'am.
this class. Yeah,
థ్యాంక్ యూ
God bless you.
మ్యామ్.
Have a nice weekend and God bless you. Okay,
Thank
bye.
you, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Okay, somebody wish good afternoon.